So, hey guys, today we're taking a look at Dominus. And Dominus is, well, both of the Dominus cards in general, they're pretty good, except for one thing. They have a disgusting restriction right here, right now. So, I think Dominus Purge is probably fairly playable, so this locks us out of fire, dark, and water monsters. So fire, we don't have to worry about too hard. So there's only one specific instance I think this will really backfire. So the assumption here I'm making is that we're going to be playing Ash Blossom and Joy Spring alongside Dominus Purge. And the reason you can do that is simply because, I can activate Ash Blossom first and then Dominus Purge accompanying this, right? And this is just for the rest of the duel, so as long as I activate Ash Blossom first, no problem. So potential problems with this now is, firstly, if we open 2 Ash Blossom with Dominus Purge, that's really bad. I don't know, like how much we value Ash, like the effect on this card. Just Ash Blossom type effects, I suppose. And then accompanying these Ash Blossom kind of effects, we have, I guess, the effect of just Dominus Purge if we need this on top of normal Ash Blossom Joe Spring. So one thing we can't Dominus is Max E, so we don't have that much incentive to play Purge unless you're actually genuinely worried about, I don't know, your opponent Max seeing you going first. Although that should be the least of your problems. And I guess if we draw Ash Blossom Joe Spring later at any point, that also will suck because even if it is the only fire monster we play, we can't activate that Ash Blossom in a later turn if we potentially need it. So Dominus Purge, probably good for closing out games early on. And also another bad thing about the Dominus cards, because of the specific listed attributes on these Dominus cards, you just can't play Dominus Purge or Dominus Impulse or Vanquish Soul because, you're locked at Earth here, you're locked out of Fire and Dark here. If you do not want to resolve your Earth effects, I suppose Dominus Impulse is okay. Maybe. What would be interesting is if we could force our opponent to activate a Dominus card, which I'm not 100% sure if there's a good way to ever do that. But if you could, that'd be funny. Well, if nothing else, it would be funny, I suppose. So, yeah. We're going to try building a deck list around this. So the easier one of the two is probably Impulse, but the issue about Impulse is it's much worse than Purge. If we disregard the restriction, the effect here that Dominus is negating is when a card or effect is activated that includes an effect that adds a card from the deck to the hand. So this effect is pretty good for dealing with certain annoying cards. And if you have a trap in your graveyard, you can destroy the card as well, which is more relevant, in my opinion, than the effect on Impulse. So if we were to, for example, just go ahead and look at the Snake Eye cards, right? And just focus on the destroy effect first. What card does destroying impact? So Snake Eye Ash will tribute itself. You special summon a guy. Oak will have that effect as well, and Oak also has the effect to, of course, special summon or add. So the only 2 cards that you have that you can really affect, well, actually 2. Is there 2? No, there's just the one. It's Snake Eye Oak, effect to special summon from graveyard. And that is the only effect where the destroy in particular matters. So of course, being able to stop the search for Flamberge or stop Flamberge is effect to kind of Monster Reborn. That is pretty nice. Except, actually, this can be played around. So specifically with the Flamberge, you can play around Ghost Bell effects by linking off. If you have Poplar and Flamberge on the field at the same time, for example, if we link both of these guys off for IP, and then go Chain, 1 Flambridge, chain 2 Poplar. That would chain block against Dominus. So that sucks. And you actually don't need Oak for your line, right? Your 1-card combo line. It's not necessary, so you can actually just play around this. This cannot be played around, and you would have to just tank the Purge. Because there's no way for you to tank the Snake Eye Ash search, I guess. This is also kind of worse than Ash Blossom Joe Spring because this only stops ads specifically, but you know, it would be good against Nightmare Pain as well. So we have like Nightmare Pain, we have what else? We have Nightmare Pain, the Voiceless Voice continuous spell. We have also Sangan Summoning, which gets countered by Purge pretty hard. So imagine I have, like, in this case, maybe my archetype plays some kind of trap. So let's say I am playing Orchist, right? So I have the Orchist trap Crescendo in my back row. It gets Dustered, I don't contest it. Or maybe I do contest it, it doesn't really matter. If my opponent activates Sangan Summoning, I will always be able to Dominus Purge. Well, I guess Dominus Purge isn't necessarily the best with Orcus being a dark deck, so maybe I should have came up with a different example. But yeah, let's say I activate the Purge, and my opponent, yeah, excuse me for that one, but yeah, the Purge would destroy the one of Sangan Summoning, and then we wouldn't have to deal with that on a further turn. So let's say if I were to just use Ash Blossom on the field spell, the field spell will remain on the field, applying protection for my opponent. But with Dominus, in this case, it'll destroy the field spell, which would also be able to search next turn, which kind of sucks for us to have to deal with. So yeah, that's kind of problematic, depending on exactly what you're playing, I suppose. But yeah, that's something that we can kind of keep in mind. I guess if you were playing Punk, this would make sense because you can search with Madame Spider, right? And I don't think you care about these attributes too much. And you can also keep Dominus Purge in hand, because you only require your opponent to control a card to activate Dominus Purge. Which, is this more fair? Because of this heavy restriction here, I'd say, like, maybe. But we'll see. The main thing that Dominus does that's really concerning, I guess, might be certain decks can't play it because, you know, your attributes align too hard, like Dark Fire. If you're playing a deck with Darker Fire and board pieces, you can't activate Purge. And if you play Ash Blossom Joe Spring, you cannot activate Ash Blossom Joe Spring after you activate Purge. And the issue with this specifically is Purge you would want to technically fire off unless it's like maybe you're waiting for a continuous spell or like field spell to activate. But aside from that, Dominus Purge you would want to fire off much sooner than Ash Blossom Joe Spring because the condition on Dominus is much more specific than Ash Blossom Joe Spring. Because Ash Blossom Joe Spring actually has 2 more conditions listed aside from add a card. Ash Blossom has add a card, special summon from the deck, and send a card from the deck to the graveyard. Whilst this only has add a card, right? So Dominus Purge is worse than Ash Blossom Joe Spring in those regards, but Ash Blossom Joe Spring is worse in regards to if your opponent has specifically, well, I guess, a continuous spell or a field spell that you can destroy with Purge. But the issue with Purge destroying is you would need a trap in your graveyard to activate Purge's effect to destroy, which I can't think of many ways to do this turn 1 that would be super reasonable. So that's interesting. But the restriction here is specifically only if you activate it from the hand. If you don't activate from the hand, it's actually fine though to hold on to Purge for later, which is kind of neat. And since it does have this, if we're feeling especially psychopathic, if we have some way to send a rollback turn 1, then we could maybe go Dominus Purge to go ahead and go, let's see, like chain, we could train rollback, target Dominus Purge against our opponent adding a card. So that would be like maybe 2 to 3 interruptions first turn off of something like that. Can't think of a really good way. If we were playing Labyrinth, Purge would, no longer work. So I guess you could do that maybe if you're playing Dominus Impulse. So imagine I impulse something and then I send a rollback, setting like a welcome or big welcome, and then we can activate this. And in fact, if we had imperm on top of this, actually, imagine this: chain 1, imperm, chain 2, we just set like a big welcome. Can we do that? Yeah, we can. We can set big welcome, activate big welcome, right? Oh yeah, we can just do that actually, right? Yeah, we don't need imperm then. And then, well, is there a way to activate that? No, I don't think that works anymore, actually, does it? It kind of works, but we can't have rollback in the graveyard, so we can't get the destroy effect. So, alright, I got it. So, our goal here is going to be to get the big labyrinth lady onto the field, the one that has protection, right? So, Lady Lab here. So summon Lady Lab. If you're able to do so on the first turn, you would then activate like a Dominus. So maybe it would be a little bit annoying to do, but we could go like either Welcome or Big Welcome in hand will work. Doesn't really matter too much. Areas sets either. Activate one of them to summon Lady Lab. Essentially, if this adds to hand, I think Lady Lab's condition is met still. If you activate Big Welcome to add this to hand, you can still summon Lady Lab, and then you should be able to Dominus. And then that should just work, I guess. And then you can set whatever crap you want, I suppose. Maybe in this case it would be a welcome, I'm guessing. I don't know. But you can do that, and then you have like stuff going on. Well, I guess that wouldn't be immediately activatable unless you had Kuklok, like whatever you're saying from the deck, but you have options in general, and Dominus is also worse in the sense that, but what if my opponent doesn't have a special summon effect? What if they just inherently special summon, Then, then what? Bit awkward there, huh? So, in terms of inherent summons, you can't stop those, like, at all. So, something like a Yshtira, kind of bad. It's not like the worst thing in the world, I suppose, but one thing you can't Dominus, I guess, is Shangri-Ira, so there's that. If you activate these Dominus cards against Prep, you're probably just fine, honestly, because I don't think there's a window where it matters. But this card really sucks ass. So, if we special summon Unicorn, you can't do anything with that Dominus. If we try to activate Theosis or Birth, you'll be able to respond to those, unless it specifically says something when a card or effect is activated. What does that mean? Effect activated. Does that include continuous cards activating? I believe so, right? It doesn't strictly just say activation, I believe. So you can negate the effect of Birth right here, I guess. Which doesn't matter that much, I don't think. Because this is still a good ways worse than I think, like, well, the cards that this will absolutely obliterate, I think. Let's see, negate that effect, not negate activation, right? Does this negate activation? Negate that effect. Okay, so these negate effect, and that matters sometimes, I guess. So these can't be activated in damage step, noticeably. Otherwise, they would be able to work against Chundra, noticeably, which is interesting. but it can't, so no need to worry about that, I suppose. But alright. What deck uses mostly inherent summons, to the point where you would never be able to do anything against them with the Dominus cards? Especially, I guess, Impulse. So this requires your opponent to special summon a monster, so this would work on Mo Yi, but wouldn't work on the Tenyis. So there's that, I guess. And then if we go to, I guess, here, we can quickly comb through a few archetypes. So this wouldn't work. The uh, max metal morph or whatever, that wouldn't work. Tour guide, that wouldn't work. Goblin bikers wouldn't fully work, I guess. Dragon rulers are they inherent summons? No. There's a chain on that one, so that doesn't quite work. Bestials, you can kind of use it on Bestials, it's just like not necessarily that great, and you wouldn't be able to do so on your own turn because your opponent will not control any cards, so that doesn't work. Oh, but that adds another layer actually. Like, does my opponent actually have Impulse? If they have Impulse, then I don't want to activate maybe, let's say, Ash Blossom Joy Spring just yet, or something else. I don't know, because they'll be able to activate Purge or Impulse against my other thing. So something like, imagine Chain Link 1, I go Imperm, Chain Link 2, Bestial, and then you go like Chain Link 3, Dominus, Impulse. Or actually, in this case, it would be Chain Link 4. You would have to move those up one chain, because I'd be maybe doing it in response to something. I'm not 100% sure, but you know, we could negate a Bestial with this. And then let's see, inherent summons anywhere. I guess it's Sprite mostly, but Sprite's not even 100%. I guess just inherent summons. It's just useless against, I guess, just making Zeus. I'm not sure if there's a deck that inherent summons enough to be able to play around that right now. Nothing's just coming. Well, yeah, nothing's coming to mind. Being any special summon effect, this is actually pretty good, I guess, right? Impulse. But there are other cards that can shut down certain cards harder. So, for example, with Dominus Impulse, if I do normal summon Snake Eye Ash by itself, now there are two different points you might consider being able to Impulse, actually, like a lot against Snake Eye. But let's see, if I do Poplar would end up being potentially stuck in the hand, or I could just normal summon it, you know, depending on how I got to Snake Eye Ash. So that's a little bit complicated. So if I specifically did 1-for-1 for Snake Eye Ash, that'd be hard. And then there's also the aspect that makes the Dominus cards so kind of nasty, is that they're actually trapped. So Triple Tactics, Talents, and Thrust are not usable against Impulse. And the only way you would be able to counteract Impulse is you wouldn't be able to call by either of the Dominus cards. You would have to specifically cross out these cards, but it might not be possible for your deck. So let's assume maybe we're playing Branded, right? If my opponent wants to activate, or if I want to activate Branded Fusion, right? Dominus Impulse plus Light, and there are some light monsters that you really want to be activating in Branded. So you're not really happy about playing Impulse, right? So yeah, that's really awkward. You all play Cartesia, I'm pretty sure, at the very least. I'm not sure how many other light monsters you have, but you have a good amount, right? I think either Albion or Lubellion is a light. I believe it was Lubellion that was the light, and Albion being the dark. And then you wouldn't be able to activate Albion for the rest of the duel if you activate Impulse. So you don't want to necessarily be playing this in your main, but you need it for cross out maybe, so you could cross out for Branded Fusion. So imagine like chain 1 Branded Fusion, chain 2 Impulse, chain 3 cross out, banish Impulse. something like that, right? So that makes these cards a bit extra weird. So I'm not 100% sure the best usage for these Dominus cards. Like, do we want to play them? Do we not want to play them? Still kind of getting mixed feelings from this, but I mean, it certainly won't hurt you to have these cards, I guess, at the very least. If we have a deck that meets enough conditions, it should be fine. So with Impulse, if I was playing like a dark deck that also played Ash Blossom Spring, and I'm not playing either Nibiru or Effect Veiler, I'm pretty happy, but there's another downside to Impulse actually, because this gives your opponent actually information. So if I were to activate Dominus Impulse against just let's say 1-for-1, and my opponent did Ash Blossom Spring for 1-for-1, right? So now the info I have as the Dominus player is that my opponent will have some kind of level 1 monster in their main deck somewhere. So they could be on literally anything. They could just be running a small Snake Eye package, and they're actually just playing, I don't know, Altergeist, Snake Eye Altergeist or something. They could, and I would be none the wiser. But with Impulse, right? If I activate Impulse, my opponent will know with very high likelihood what I am playing. So let's say I activate Impulse, and let's say the meta at the current moment is like Yubel, Snake Eye, and then something else. So immediately, if I activate Dominus Impulse, my opponent will know that I am pretty much just going to be on Yubel in terms of like meta decks, or I'm playing a rogue deck that is capable of playing Impulse. But if I am playing meta, I am playing Dominus Impulse, so probably Yubel. And another downside to this is they know there are certain hand traps I can no longer hit them with. So if you activate Impulse, it shouldn't matter too much, but Maxi, not activatable. Effect Veiler, Gamma, Nibiru for Wind, Girl and Lockbird, and then you also have what's his face? Like Miradora. None of those are going to be activatable. Ghost Ogre as well. They no longer have to play around that. Ghost Bell, you don't have to play around that anymore either. And that's a lot of information. So even if they wouldn't know our archetype, they do know that we cannot activate those hand traps any longer, right? And they don't know 100% if we are playing those cards, but they're likely not in hand if we're activating Impulse early. That, or they're like, maybe you're really concerned with the card being activated, like maybe it's a branded fusion and you feel like you have to immediately stop this and you can't go for like an effect failure. So maybe we did branded loss first and then activate branded fusion, right? Then we wouldn't be able to respond with Imperm or Veiler after branded fusion resolves. So that could be something we're concerned about as well. So yeah, it gives a lot of information if you're playing Impulse, actually, which is kind of bad because in a best of one format, one of your best tools is to abuse your opponent's lack of information. So one way you could do this is, for example, just going battle phase, and well, when it becomes your turn immediately, you can just go battle phase, right? And certain times your opponent will be forced to activate some cards they might not like, just in case you actually have evenly, or you actually have evenly, and they will just completely be bent over backwards, you know, because evenly. And they didn't activate their cards, right? So in this case, maybe it's like IP into Apo, and Apo would have been most of their negates, and if they made Apo ahead of time, in this case, they would have 4 interruptions still, and you cannot run over Apo by battle. So that's still pretty good in general if you were to do something like that. Okay. You're giving a lot of information. So Purge specifically, this one I think will give a lot more info and be a lot more telling, because I feel like a lot more decks will end up running Impulse versus Purge. So if you are running Purge, that means you're not on a dark deck nor a fire deck, which are like pretty meta right now, I would say. And the majority of good cards, I would say, or good archetypes, dark archetypes. So yeah, that just eliminating dark out of the equation, that brings it down a lot. And I'm not sure if you really care about like um fire monsters here. So very intriguing. So let's see, what else do we have here with the Dominus cards that we need to worry about? So, oh yeah, they require your opponent to control a card. If they don't control a card, you can't activate Purge. So cards that search, there's some that you just can't purge. There's some you can as well, of course. So if we look at like a reinforcement of the army, right? So this will add a card. And when we specifically do Rhoda, this effect here, add 1 level 4 or lower warrior monster from your deck to your hand. When you activate this, you will control the reinforcement of the army, so you should be able to purge this. So like chain 1 Rhoda, chain 2 purge. That makes sense, right? We should be able to do that. But if we were to do, for example, let's say a virtual world card instead, wouldn't work because you need to control a virtual world card for that. But if we were to do, let's say, Foolish Burial. So let's say we do Foolish Burial goods in particular, sending Celiac. We'll do this, and Celiac add. So when Celiac does the add, we won't control Foolish Burial goods anymore, and therefore control no cards. Then we can add Tearlament's Rhinoheart effect to send, and you can't Dominus Purge that, and then we can do the effect to fusion summon Kikkelos, which you also can't do anything about, and then Kikkelos effect to add, and that's when you will first be able to purge, right? And that would be against Tearlament, and there are a lot more decks where you would have to keep that factor in mind and kind of like think about it, I guess. I don't 100% remember all of the cards that can kind of search like this, right? But you can't purge it, I guess, right? And purge is also hard once per turn, so a bit awkward. And I don't know if it's as high value as like an Ash Blossom necessarily, because you know, a lot less things you can hit with purge. So because of that, in some cases purge could be better, it could be worse than Ash Blossom, and you just might not get that much mileage out of purge. So effect wise, I'd say it could be really good, or it could be not that good. I'm not like, I don't have my mind made up because there are a lot of different cases that can occur. But for a going second card, would this be best going second or going first? I mean, going first, it's going to be better already because you don't have to worry about this effect because you can set the Dominus Purge. But you can also hold it in your hand, like unlike a infinite impermanence, which could be destroyed by like a duster. So it's better in that regard actually, but the effect itself is not as good as infinite impermanence. Negating a monster on the field is a lot more generic and a lot more powerful than Purge's effect. And if you were to top deck Purge, it's not a good top deck either. So Imperm is just fine. Ash Blossom Spring is not the best, but if your opponent does have like a maxi, at least it trades 1-for-1 with the maxi. Yeah. And there are a few archetypes that do search on your turn, like Flandres, I guess. With the effect of Rabina. If you cannot chain block that, then you could Ash it, I guess. But I think you can also chain block it, so. Yeah, not that great, is it? Let me think. If it's chain blockable, hold up, let's see. So, you need 1 bird in hand, you'll banish 1 bird, you'll have the other bird, right? So we'll go like, and we'll summon Robina, and you always have like Eaglin banished or Robina. It doesn't matter. But one of the two, I don't think it matters which one you normal summon first. So it's like activate Dreaming Town, normal summon Robina, trigger Robina, chain to Eaglin. Eaglin you can't do anything about. So on normal summon Eaglin, you should be able to Ash or or purge this. And then Eaglin can't add, so therefore no normal summon. I think, right? But if they started Stree, if they started with the Stree, they would have both of these, I think. Would you be able to get Stree, Eaglin, and Robina on banished? I don't think you can. But you could actually activate Eaglin first, in this case, if you have Stree. Yeah. So it's still okay against, like, a deck like Flandres, despite the chain block, I suppose. You could make something happen. Maybe. Let me think. Yeah. So the better chain link order here is to do Eaglin first, in case you have map to play around like Ash Blossom and also Purge. How unintuitive, but okay. Yeah, that's an issue, I guess, to an extent. Impulse, probably a little bit more useful than Purge because Special Summon is more likely to occur on your turn than your opponent adding a card, I think. So, yeah, Impulse, I think, is going to be the Dominus card that's favored more out of the two we have here. So, yeah. It's just kind of irritating knowing that your opponent can activate certain effects and you just can't stop it. Hmm. Well, yeah. Not a whole lot we can do about this, I guess, but what is interesting about Impulse is, doesn't this work pretty good against Labyrinth? Huh. That's kind of useful, I guess. I don't know exactly what deck would be best to play Impulse in right now because it would take a good amount of analysis. But yeah, I think I'll probably look to get a playset of Impulse before I worry too much about Purge. Just not being able to activate an Ash Blossom Joy Spring already hurts a lot for Purge, I guess. So, for example, let's say I am going first and my opponent activates Maxi in like draw phase. I can't Purge it. Another instance of Purge kind of sucking, I suppose. If my opponent were activating Nibiru, I wouldn't be able to impulse that either unless I specifically gave my opponent like a token or something. So impulse allows you to play around Nibiru in a kind of unconventional way, which is kind of fun, I suppose. But yeah, you wouldn't be able to do that in Mech Knight because you play lights. In Orchist, Dominus Impulse. Yeah, that seems pretty good because you didn't have a super good way to deal with Nibiru, so that's something, I guess. And light, earth, and wind monsters you don't really care about too much. If you were playing Fiendsmith though, you can't play Impulse, which is interesting. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys today, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.